Normally, when people speak about anything dark or anything concerning hell, there's usually very dark or, demonic images used while describing or talking about whatever it is about hell that they're discussing. But I did not want to put any of those images out in anyone's psyche. I also don't want people to envision hell as, Hollywood has depicted it, because hell takes many shapes and forms. And I'm not speaking specifically about a place in this video, but I wanted to take my audience on a small but yet detailed journey as to what cycles truly are, and describe to them what is hell loops and the types of hell loops that people go through. Life, as we know, runs on a system. There's rules, there's laws to existence, laws to physics, laws to mathematics, and other forms, of sciences that we use to describe or to understand the world around us and the universe around us. You get what I mean? There's just laws and patterns that happen, all right? And we can, trace this back to something divine and say that this pattern, this sequence that we find in life and in existence is, designed. Like anything set in a sequence, in a chain, a cycle, there's certain rules for that structure. Some of that is applied even in the development of a fetus. Their stages. And even on something on a microscopic level that then grows in stages until something that we can visibly see with the naked eye. So too with different events or troubles, conditionings that we are living through day in and day out. There are stages that we go through that we must evolve from. And if we don't, we get thrown back into that same cycle. To make this easier to understand, this particular cycle is something that many people are familiar with. Many people torture themselves on diets. Diet is a good example of a physical, mental, psychological loop that we put ourselves through. And eventually, with very strict diets where you cut out every single thing and every carb and every sugar, you lose a lot of weight. But eventually, over time, the weight that you lost does come back. And it's because you return back to the same eating habits that you had that put the weight on in the first place. And then so we go back to that very strict diet. And then we lose that 10, 15 pounds yet again. And then after we fall off that diet, we gain that 10 to 15 pounds back. So it's a loop that we put ourselves in instead of mastering the proper diet that suits our bodies, where we can not only maintain our weights, but prevent the possibilities or the chances of gaining that weight back while eating food that we enjoy. Some of the best health experts, holistic living, experts and teachers, they have lived a very unhealthy lives prior to, subscribing to a lifestyle that was beneficial for their well-being. A lot of them suffered from eating disorders and even obesity. Some of those people beat the cycle, all right? They beat the cycle, which then elevated them to the next phase of wholeness and wellness. And in doing so, they were able to gain the knowledge to help other people overcome their cycles and their loops, when it comes to health. A lot of people do not consider obesity a hell loop, but it is. It's detrimental to your mental and physical health. It's deadly. But moving on to a more common hell loop, this loop has built so many platforms. It has been a major topic on social media since probably the dawn of social media. And that is the type of relationships that we enter romantically. This can be, in fact, a hell loop for us. For some of us, we have a very good and a very refined skill in judging people's character, but sometimes and an occasional, a-hole slips through the cracks. But what I find in these relationship loops for people who keep running into the same abusive and tumultuous relationships is they're not identifying boundaries, and they're not setting boundaries. A lot of people that enter abusive relationships one after another, they have not built enough esteem and enough self-respect to exit these relationships. They are addicted, just like food, to chaos. And a lot of that addiction stems from we tend to draw in or be very attached to what is familiar to us. And if you are very familiar with abuse and at the hand of your parents, people really do fail to realize that your childhood is such a short and small part of your life, but some of the things that you experience and are forced to tolerate does in fact impact you for the rest of your life if you don't, one, catch the error, and two, work towards resolving that issue. So if you have had an abusive parent, or it could have been a caretaker of yours, someone that you was consistently around or left in care of, it could even be an older sibling. Someone in your life who was in charge of your well-being. Maybe they have mistreated you, or you were forced to tolerate abuse that the abuse that they were going through personally. Like, for instance, seeing your parent being physically or mentally abused. Another thing is just not having the autonomy, not being able to say no. These are little bitty things that become very big factors and how we operate in relationships. So these loops that we put ourselves through romantically stem from unresolved loops that were created when we were younger. Not all, but most. Now, the term that we constantly get and we keep hearing throughout social media, people are self-diagnosing and diagnosing other people with narcissism. So narcissistic gets thrown around a lot, probably a million times a day. And one of the reoccurring statements that I see in comment sections is about how, I just keep attracting narcissism. The last 5 relationships have all been, with these narcissistic people. And part of the reasons why these same people keep entering their lives is because they have not identified the said loop. So, if you are a person that has reoccurring people that come in your life that use you, abuse you, and downgrade you and degrade you, it is because you are in fact in a romantic hell loop. You have to stop to identify, one, what is it about these type of people that attracted you in the first place? 2, check yourself. Check your boundaries. Because let me tell you, boundaries is a narcissistic person's repellent. They do not like when someone sets boundaries, because boundaries is the first sign of self-preservation. It is also a sign of self-respect. These are two things that a lot of manipulative people look for in a person. If there is someone that's trying to enter into your life to use you and to then toss you aside and discard, the two things they're going to look for is whether you have self-respect and whether you have self-preservation. You cannot have self-respect without wanting to preserve your life, your livelihood, your peace, and love for yourself and the people around you. But in order to defend and protect those two things, you must have boundaries. And when someone like a narcissistic person sees boundaries, that's their red flags. Your red flags is someone teetering around your boundaries, pressing in their, fingers and putting their tippy toe over the line of said boundaries. Boundaries are things that make you uncomfortable. Boundaries are things that you are not compromising over. You cannot compromise with boundaries. You don't draw a line and then compromise on it. No, the compromise happens within the bounds. It happens within boundaries. But when that line is drawn, do not bend on that, because then what will be affected is your morality, your life. Okay, your life is dependent on it. Your health. Okay, so when you draw that line, draw it thick and don't let anyone cross over. Because once your defenses are down, all kinds of chaos happens, because, whoever is in it for themselves, whoever has come to steal and destroy, they start to run amok because your defense is down. The boundaries is your defense mechanism to prevent you from allowing abuse, allowing pain and suffering. And if you have very little boundaries, very little defenses, anyone can come in and put you through a cycle that, take you completely on a ride that you'll be begging to get off of, and it just won't stop. Well, that's what it seems like. That's what it feels like. But you can stop. You can get off the hamster wheel. You can break the chain. You can get out of that hell loop when you learn. The key thing is learning. Develop and allow these phases and stages of your life to shape and mold you, not break you. Easier said than done. But I just gave 2 examples of a hell loop. But there are many, many more. In the next video, I'll be discussing using people, public figures that we know about. Most of us will know about. And then I will show you the types of hell loops that they are in, as well as pointing out an example of how these loops appear in our lives.